All right, guys, welcome back to episode 3 of the JEB Board podcast. Welcome to all the casuals at home listening. We've had an exciting week so far in the football world, so we're getting ready to talk about that. My name is Grayson Applin. I'm recording from not Atlanta this week. I am currently in Western Michigan, Kalamazoo, home of the Western Michigan University Broncos. So I'm here for a work trip. So I'm in enemy territory. I feel like I'm about 2 hours from Kyle right now as the crow flies. I would much prefer to be farther than 2 hours for him, but I guess we kind of have to live with it for this week. So alongside me this week again is Cheese Brain Kyle Oberhart, the Lumberjack Nick Noah,
as always.
28-3 denier Brandon Black, and then Bounty Gate was just a way to make him play harder. Caleb Naylor.
How and we doing, feels guys? Better every time you say it.
How we doing?
Doing great, baby. Ready to get into it.
I hate fantasy.
I love fantasy.
We all have had a very interesting week of fantasy football. There's been a lot of interesting games going on this past week in the NFL and college alone. Week two is an interesting week, so we can't wait to start breaking that down for you guys and kind of looking forward to the future for the NFL and college football. But first things first, as always, we got to talk about fantasy. I know several of us on this podcast probably don't want to talk about fantasy right now because it has been a week for some and it's been an easy week for others. So
Stephon Diggs would drop 32 tonight.
Yeah, and we don't think that's going to happen. You know, I heard that a really good pickup was T. Higgins. I heard that was a great pickup in fantasy this year.
8 targets. You won't, right? You know,
yeah,
you don't want.
It's pretty ideal for a wide receiver too.
Yeah. How many receptions? We didn't hear that.
Zero.
How many yards?
0.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
He's leading the league in cardio.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's tied with the Titans for touchdowns.
Oh. Yeah, you got a point there. I mean, I see.
The casuals aren't going to like that.
The casuals are not going to like that. I mean, but let's be honest, though. The Saints had a really good rush defense. So we can't really fault Derrick Henry not being able to do anything this past week. So
it's almost like somebody saw that coming.
Yeah, Grayson, do you know what they're ranked? Because I can't remember.
No, who? The Titans?
No, the Saints run defense. I
don't know specific ranking.
Top 10.
Probably top 10.
Yeah, that sounds right, but I don't know.
All right, well, getting into it, we're going to start the fantasy segment off the way we always do. We're going to do our best and worst matchups and then our projection for week 2 MVP. So I am going to pull up our whiteboard here for everybody watching on YouTube. A slight interjection too. I'm just going to go ahead and make the announcement. This episode will be posted on Spotify. Correct, Caleb?
That is correct, in addition to Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. So if you get tired of looking at us and you just want to listen to us, you want to hear my beautiful songbird voice, all you got to do is listen to on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
And you can watch us there too, because the video uploads as well. So you can watch the video too if you want to. If you don't, put it in CarPlay.
Well, how about that? Anyways, had to put my slight what is it called when you interject? Make my little sales pitch right there.
Marketing tactic right there, baby.
Yeah, marketing tactic. Yeah. Just like the nuh-uh defense. It's interjected somehow. Anyways, best and worst matchups of week 2. So as always, we will start with Kyle Oberhart. Kyle, if you want to break down who you have as your best and worst.
Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that it's the truth. He is the man. And to be honest with you, Philly made Mac Jones look good. And if they're going to do that, imagine what they're going to let Jefferson do to him. He's going to have multiple. He's going to have multiple receptions. I think over a 25-plus point game easily. Best receiver on the field.
Yeah.
Still glad I went number 1 pick with him.
Well, and one thing to talk about with this too is something that we've kind of alluded to, maybe off broadcast, but Jordan Addison, I think, is going to pan out really well.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm glad I started him in the sleeper league. But I mean, even though the Vikings lost to my Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
Yes, sir.
Their offense still looked good. So I don't know. They just couldn't score. They just really couldn't score. So that's that bend don't break defense down there in the Bay.
But that's another point. That's going to get a lot of pressure off Jefferson. He's going to have a lot more opportunities to be open, a lot more catches, a lot more yards, and I think he's going to have a good week again.
Yeah. Well, what about your worst matchup right here?
I hate to say it, but Higbee, man, San Francisco just looks so dang good on defense, and I think anyone playing them is not going to have a good time. Going off my lineup, this is my worst matchup. Higbee, I'd be shocked if he gets over 5 points. I don't see it happening. San Francisco is just so stout, man.
Agreed. Their defense is, I mean, just like last year, looking kind of scary. So after what they did to Pittsburgh. So, Caleb, what about you, man? What are we looking at here?
So for my best matchup that I'm looking at this week, it's got to be Tyreek Hill. Coming off of a week like last week, there's no way I'm not picking Hill. And for my worst matchup, I'm going to have to say that my worst matchup is Geno Smith. Once again, going off of last week, I talked a big game about how bad the LA Rams defense was going to be, and they completely punched me in the face. And they made Geno Smith cry out, oh my God, when Aaron Donald was getting in his face. I think the Patriots looked really good on defense this past weekend, but not good enough to contain Hill and Tagovailoa.
Blah, 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 blah. And what about
I swallowed my Tagovailoa. So Geno Smith is playing the Lions this week. I think the Lions had a really good showing against Kansas City. Granted, they were missing Travis Kelce, but I think they showed a lot of promise. However, I think Geno Smith is, considering that the Seahawks only had 12 yards of offense and just 1 first down in the first half against the Rams, and the Detroit Lions did a great job of making Patrick Mahomes' evening hell last Thursday night, I'm going to have to say Geno Smith is going to be my worst matchup. I just, he's going to have to prove me wrong and prove to me that he can really turn it around, or else I'm going to be looking at the waiver wire really soon.
Do you take back what you said about the Rams defense?
Oh, 100%. I'm an absolute fool. However, I must say, if any team is going to be losing to the 49ers in the NFC Championship, it's going to be the New Orleans Saints.
All right. I'm glad you got your plug in. That was the word I was looking for earlier. My plug. The plugging in our stuff. Okay. God, short-term memory is terrible. Anyways, moving on to Nick Noah. Best and worst matchups.
Well, I've got some good matchups. My problem this week was not scoring, was getting scored on. Because I was beating Caleb by 40, and then Cowboys defense and Tyreek Hill combined for 80 points. So it's kind of looking around. ETN, he looked really good. He had 77 yards rushing with a touchdown. He had 5 targets, caught them all for 27 yards. And, I don't think he's going to have any drop-off against Kansas City. Colts defense looked really good compared to what we thought it would be as far as, the expectations we had for the Jags offense. But worst matchup, Justin Fields looked like he just started, for his first game again. I don't know if that was kind of for a rivalry kind of impact or how everybody's been hyping him up. And so I could see him struggling again against Tampa Bay solely for the fact that Tampa Bay's strength are their linebackers. And so they're going to be spying and watching the QB run. And so, Tampa Bay did give up 300, yards on the Vikings, but you've got Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So you're going to see, I think it's going to be a pretty big drop off. I could still see 15 points at the most. So he's probably my worst matchup.
I got you. BB, why don't you give us our best and worst matchup for you, buddy?
All right, so the best matchup I got is Mike Evans versus the Bears. Chicago last week gave up 10.4 yards per attempt and made Kyle think that Jordan Love's a good quarterback. So I think Baker Mayfield's a little bit better than Jordan Love, and Mike Evans is a
Me too.
man child. For my worst matchup, I got the Minnesota defense versus the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is about to cook them. If Baker Mayfield can do it, Jalen can do it. And I think playing off of that, I think the Philadelphia's defensive line is going to get a lot of 3 and outs against the against Minnesota. So that defense is going to be on the field all game long.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess going into my best and worst matchup. So I kind of did mine a little bit differently. I kind of liked all of my matchups, so I looked on some other teams and found a worse matchup. My best matchup is for my team. I picked Keenan Allen versus Tennessee. Looking back at the stats from this past week, yes, the Saints only scored 16 points, but they did give up 305 yards passing on 23 of 33 attempts from Derek Carr. Chris Olave had 8 receptions for 112 yards, and then Shaheed had 5 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown. So I think just like we talked about in previous episodes, with the amount of talent that the Chargers have and Keenan Allen kind of being that solidified number 1 guy, I think he's going to blow through Tennessee. Going to my worst matchup, like I said, I picked somebody else from a different team right here. I think that Cam Akers is going to have an incredibly hard time against the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, that game went very bad for the Steelers. And looking right here at the stats, the Steelers had 37. They had 41 yards rushing against San Francisco. So I think San Francisco's rush defense is going to be something to handle all year. I feel like that's a possible worst matchup against them all the time. But I think Cam Akers is not going to be able to really do much against it.
Did you see what his stats were against the Seahawks?
No.
22 carries for 29 yards.
God.
Yeah, Cam Akers is not going to get nearly as many touches because they're not going to let him play.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, I got some big news. Aaron Rodgers just went down, and they had to walk him off the field.
I was just about to say that.
Yep.
Man,
Yes.
Yes. Talk about breaking news, huh?
Yeah.
Of course, Kyle's the one that's breaking. He's like, "Oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers went down. We got to talk about this."
Yeah. Hey, that's my first round pick that just went down, baby. He better get his ass back in that game. I need 65%.
So obviously,
they carted him off.
No, they helped him off.
Oh, okay.
So for context for everybody listening right now, this is being done on Monday night. This is going on during the Jets and Bills game. So I guess we will update as we go about that. That might change a little bit of our picks from last week, guys. But we'll keep everybody updated as we go. Obviously, everybody will listen to this after the fact, but we're going to talk about it now.
It looks like a soft hit.
Yeah. So, okay, well, going into our week 2 MVPs, let's go reverse order right here. Let's start with BB and let's go into your week 2 MVP right here.
All right. My week 2 MVP is Anthony Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
He looked good against Jaguars defense. Week 1. He scored 20 points, and this week they have the Houston Texans, who I don't think is going to be that good of a defense as of week 2. I think like later on down the season they're going to be stout, but right now I don't think they got it all figured out. And as long as he doesn't turn over the ball, I think he's going to have at least 16, 17 points, which is a lot better than people would think.
Right. Let's see. Nick, what you thinking?
Same guy who screwed me first week. It's Tyreek Hill. I mean, Tyreek. he's going to get his points. He plays the Patriots this week, and so kind of just piggybacking off Caleb. The Dolphins have a great way of putting him in motion to keep him in space. It's not like he's having to make crazy catches. It's just, I mean, he finds the open spots in the defense, and if he's got even 3 yards worth of separation, that turns into 10 real quick after the catch. So his yards after catch is insane. So yeah, he's just going to continue. It's kind of like what they did last year. I mean, the Dolphins are going to look like the number 1 team for the first 5 weeks. Tyreek Hill is going to look like an MVP, caliber wide receiver, and then they suck.
Let's see. Let's go with Mr. Naylor. I like your week 2 MVP here.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. I wish I had him on my team. So in this instance, my MVP takes us to the Detroit and Seattle game. And when you're watching this game, look for Amon-Ra St. Brown to have himself a ball game. And the reason I say that isn't just because the man is talented, it's also because the Seattle defense coughed up 334 receiving yards against a Cooper Kupp-less Los Angeles Rams. And look for Amon-Ra St. Brown to stick it to the Seahawks this weekend.
Yeah. All right, Kyle?
Yeah, so I'm going to go Calvin Ridley. 8 receptions, 101 yards with a touchdown. This is Trevor Lawrence's go-to guy playing against Kansas City, and Kansas City did not look good against Detroit. And I think Jacksonville is a much better team than Detroit. I look for another 100-plus receiving yard and maybe even 2 touchdowns from him this game.
All right. Well, I mean, you guys can see who I've got. Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb plays the Pittsburgh Steelers this coming up. And I'm going to lay down some facts for y'all real quick.
Let's hear them.
This past week, Nick Chubb had 18 carries for 106 yards.
What?
He had 4 receptions for 21 yards.
What?
The Steelers themselves gave up to Christian McCaffrey 152 yards rushing for 22 carries. Fact.
What?
So, that being said, I think Nick Chubb is going to run all over the Steelers, which is something that has not been said in recent memory about the Steelers. Usually they have a really good rushing defense, but I do think that Nick Chubb is just going to tear it up. He didn't have a touchdown this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 2, maybe even 3, and he blows it out the water for whoever's team he's on. So, all right. So that's fantasy football for this week. So now let's move on to the real stuff. Let's get to the NFL. As we said last week, we are doing a divisional breakdown every single week. Last week was the AFC South. This week, we're going to go to their counterparts in the NFC. We're going to go to the NFC South, which I know myself, BB, and Caleb are all pretty excited to talk about. So let's go ahead and have Caleb talk. That way we can go ahead and get it out of the way because I don't want to hear about the Saints too much.
Alrighty, so first off, I'm just going to say what we're all thinking. The NFC South is definitely going to be a more competitive division than anyone anticipated. Tampa beating Minnesota was huge. Mayfield was looking really good as that game progressed, and I think Tampa's going to have a much brighter season than anyone gave them credit for leading into this season. The Falcons look better than they have in a long time. Ritter seems more comfortable. Algier is definitely a weapon. Granted, it was Carolina. They still looked really, really good and really, really clean. I like them against the Packers coming up this week. Carolina is definitely the weakest link when it comes to the NFC South. Bryce Young is having some growing pains. I would also say that...
He's not growing anymore.
Yeah. And I would also say that, you saw some good production out of Chuba Hubbard, but Chuba Hubbard and that entire stable of running backs can't replace one Christian McCaffrey, and I am sure Panthers fans are missing him. So I would say, though, when we're coming down to the Big Easy, the NFC South Division Championship still comes through New Orleans. They did not give up a single touchdown to the Titans. They caught 3 interceptions. Granted, it was Ryan Tannehill. And they held the Titans to 104 total rushing yards. Held Henry himself to 63 yards out of 15 attempts at rushing. My takeaway is that if the Saints fix their offensive line pass protection, police these dumb penalties, saw a lot of false starts, and if they have all the tools necessary to seriously go on a run. Now, that being said, ain't nobody in this league proved to me they can beat the Niners, and the Saints are not an exception.
All right. Well, I'm going to go real quick. Usually I try to stay last, but I'm going to interject real quick. I didn't watch any of the games yesterday because I was on a plane, and all those games start around the same time. But I will say this. The Saints beat a piss-poor Tennessee Titans team. Congratulations. That couldn't score a touchdown. They literally kicked field goals the whole entire time. 15 points, 5 field goals. Like, I'm glad they have a kicker. I will say I was not expecting the Buccaneers to take one against the Vikings at all. Like I said earlier, is a bend don't break defense. Mayfield kind of showed some hope. Mike Evans had a pretty decent game. Hadn't really looked at the stats that much, like I said, to be honest with y'all. But I will say, I think the top 3 teams in that division, which is the Saints, the Buccaneers, and the Falcons, I think it's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be, realistically, I think it's going to be how it was last year, but with better records. I think that the Panthers are going to be last in the division. They've got way more issues than just, having a young quarterback. I mean, their defense is okay. I think their offensive line, from what I saw, wasn't great. And again, like I've said before, the offensive line can make or break you. I thought it was going to break the Buccaneers, but hell, they won a game. So
Adam Thielen is their number 1 receiver.
That is also a big thing. A slot receiver is their number 1 receiver. So I will say that it's going to be tough. I think the top 3 teams in that division will go 11, 10, and 9 in wins. In what order, I don't know. But they go 11, 10, and 9. Carolina rakes up the end around like with a 4 or 5 game win season maybe, and try to figure stuff out in the offseason. So, BB, I know you.
Before we get to BB, they just took Rodgers to the locker room.
Oh,
all right.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever picked the Jets, which I know I'm one of them, whoever picked them in our picks last week, we're looking in trouble, guys, because that means Zach Wilson, the Cougar Hunter, is now
baby.
Yeah. So hopefully they still have Mike White, the legend himself, to come in. But looks like we get to see Zach Wilson tonight. Maybe he's going to try to take the starting spot from Aaron Rodgers tonight. But
okay, real quick, show of hands. Who picked the Jets?
Me.
I think I did.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Okay.
All right. BB, go ahead and talk about your Atlanta Falcons.
All right. So the division-wise, I think it's going to come down to who plays better against each other in their division. Because I think.
Well, yeah, whoever wins the most games usually has a better season.
I'm talking about the divisional games in general. And with those games, I think it's going to sound very John Madden-like right here.
Yeah.
Whoever turns the ball over less is going to win the division. I'm now speaking primarily towards the Saints and Falcons games, because if Desmond Ridder does not turn the ball over, I think he's going to put us in a good position to win games. That's my only. The passing numbers aren't what you want to be, but when you run the ball down people's throats, you don't really have to throw the ball.
It's completely fair.
But really, the distance between the second. So I have Saints first, winning it. Number 2, number 3 is a toss up between Tampa Bay and Atlanta. I go either way. They both. I was going to have Atlanta all the way until Tampa Bay beat Minnesota, and pretty much Carolina last for every reason that Caleb mentioned.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's get in a look on the NFC side outside of the division. Kyle, what are you seeing for the NFC South as kind of like an unbiased opinion?
Yeah, so Carolina easily last team. I mean, that's not debatable. Bryce Young, no offense to him, loved him in Alabama. He's a really good quarterback. NFL is just sometimes they're good college quarterbacks and not good NFL quarterbacks, and I can maybe see that for Bryce Young. I hope not. I think he's a really good guy. Hope he shows up, but I doubt it. Going to the other three, I'm gonna say a really bold thing, and I think it's gonna come true. I would not be shocked if the NFC took both wild cards.
The NFC South?
Yes.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, I could see that. Saints, if they don't figure out how to score touchdowns over field goals, they're not going to win that division, and they're going to start playing better defenses. They got to figure out how to get in the end zone. I think that will come. I think Derek Carr is going to settle down a little bit. First game jitters, he's got to figure it out. But once he gets it in there, he should do better. We'll see. Going to Tampa Bay, man, there's nothing more dangerous than a Baker Mayfield who just doesn't care anymore. This is his last chance, and you know what? He's like, screw it. I'm gonna play me, and that's what he did in college, and I think that's what he's gonna do this year. And man, they got a good offense. They got good receivers. So with a dangerous Baker Mayfield, watch out for Tampa. Atlanta, young quarterback, but like BB said, they get those turnovers, and they don't do those this year. Hey man, that's going to be dangerous too. I see it Saints winning the division, and I see Tampa Bay and Atlanta taking the wild cards for the NFC.
Well, and to just kind of point out something you said there, talking about Derek Carr having like the first game jitters. He had first game jitters, but he still had 305 yards passing.
Correct, and that
23 receptions.
Yeah, you get that red zone offense figured out, that's a dangerous team.
Yeah,
that is a dangerous team.
Yeah. Well, and Nick, for you to sum it all up right here.
I disagree with every single one of you. I think the NFC South is dog shit, to be completely fair. I mean, I think the Minnesota always comes out week 1 and they look like dog shit. And that happens every year. And then they proceed to win 13 straight games. So I'm not convinced on Tampa Bay.
Thanks.
Atlanta beating the Panthers is not a statement, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Same thing can be said with the Saints because they beat the Titans. And so, yeah, I mean, I really don't see. I mean, Kyle, you saying 3? That's not bold. That's insane.
Steaming.
I mean, like that's no way.
I personally don't think so, man.
Well, I'm glad you think that way. Anyways, the rest of I mean, I see the top team, you know, it's really a toss up because they are all kind of crap. And I see their top, you know, team having at least maybe 9, 10 wins. I mean, I don't see any improvement in last year. I think the best move was getting Derek Carr, but I mean, again, it's okay. You got Derek Carr. That's it. So I disagree.
The Falcons have a winning record for the first time since 2017. Nothing you can say can hurt my feelings.
That's fair.
28-3.
That's fair. No,
Man, was I hurting to say that when y'all were talking about that. That was about 20 minutes worth of me just sitting here.
Yeah. Well, I think BB's become numb to the pain at this point in time, about 28-3.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he's seen that enough. A side note here. If you guys haven't seen it, especially you guys listening at home, you should go look at Matt Ryan's first broadcast at halftime. They were sitting there talking about they were like, this game is 10-10, but it feels like it should be 28-3. And the look on Matt Ryan's face was hilarious. He literally rolled his eyes and looked like off camera, like, did this dude really just say this to me of all people?
I thought
He
Matt
wanted
Ryan
to
was gonna
hit
headbutt
him
with
so
that big ass
bad.
head.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, moving off from so that's our NFC South breakdown for this week. Moving into, let's talk about the league in general. Let's go over some highlights and lowlights that we saw. So, I know one of the big highlights that we saw was Tua. Tua really stepped up. I mean, he played great. I mean, we had over 400 yards passing, had 3 touchdowns, had an interception, but I mean, he had a great game.
Yep. I would say this with Tua. Tua is a great quarterback. He's great at scrambling. He's great at getting out of the pocket. He's great at hitting completions. If he stays healthy, Dolphins are going to be a great team. But man, and I hate saying it, but the pass with the concussions and everything, that's a big fear. And I hope he stays this way because we'll be talking about him all season. But man, what a game. Over 400 yards. That's crazy. That's a great game for Tua.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another another highlight that we saw, which we kind of alluded to at the beginning of during fantasy football, was the 49ers defense. I mean, let's see. Nick, did you actually watch that game? Who actually watched that game?
I watched the full game.
I didn't.
You watched
because I had Chris McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel. I had a lot of their players on fantasy. I watched the full game.
Yeah, I watched it to talk smack to Hayes because it deserves it. If you're listening, Hayes, you deserve it.
Yeah. So Nick, from someone that actually watched the game, because like I said, I didn't see anything yesterday. From someone actually watching the game, what is your opinion on the 49ers defense? Was it because Pittsburgh's offense was that bad, or is the 49ers defense really that good?
It's definitely a combination of both. Because I mean, everybody was so high on Pittsburgh just because of the preseason. You can't gauge a team based on preseason. I mean, Pittsburgh's the prime example. The 49ers, I mean, I still think they have a top 3 defense. There's no question in it between Fred Warner, Hufanga. I mean, Hufanga's turning into the new Troy Polamalu.
Yeah.
So there's really no questioning the 49ers defense, but I don't think week 1 was a test because, again, I mean, you had Najee who picked up right where he left off last year, being a dud, and Kenny Pickett, again, he hasn't proven anything.
Kenny Pickoff, baby.
Yeah, his hands are the size of Hayes' brain. So it's really not saying anything, and so I don't think the 49ers defense is proven yet, but based on last year, I can still say they're proven just because they look like they left off right where they, or they started back up right where they left off. So they look good. They swarmed them. Kenny Pickett never got comfortable. George Pickens got, little Boyd. It just, I mean, it was just all around not a great game.
Yeah. And, on top of that, when you got a good defense, but when you bring in Brock Purdy, who's throwing that accurate, man, what a great combination, last pick of the draft, and he comes in there and, I hate to say it, but, thanks to injuries on his part, he was able to start. He proved himself, and he's still proving himself, man. He's still hitting the connections. He's still accurate, and he's still getting out of the pocket and getting those first downs when he needs to scramble to get them. He's a good quarterback. 49ers look like the most complete team in this league.
Yeah. And then our last highlight that we have on paper right here is Calvin Ridley. I know, BB, you watched that game. I know you were watching more for Anthony Richardson. But can you, can either you or Caleb, can y'all kind of go into detail about like what Ridley did?
I'll let BB take it away from here. I didn't get a chance to watch.
He just got open. Calvin Ridley is one of the best route runners in the league, and to your point last week about the Colts secondary, they just couldn't. I mean, they couldn't stop him.
Did he? Did Calvin Ridley? I mean, did he look like he was just in prime form, like he didn't miss a step?
Looked like he never missed a step. And I was really like the way he stopped or the out routes, cutting it, everything.
Hey,
Yeah.
BB, would you say he looked like he had money on the game?
Yeah. He played like he had the over on his yardage.
Okay.
Well, I guess going from highlights to kind of lowlights. One of the big lowlights was actually the first game of the season with Kansas City and their receivers. So, Caleb, do you want to kind of go into detail about the lack of production from Kansas City's athletes outside the tackles?
Let me just say the best player on Detroit's team that night was Kadarius Toney. That man couldn't catch a cold in a blizzard. You saw that all throughout the game, just a lot of unnecessary drops, not just from Toney, but for the first time, and I feel like forever, you saw a Lions defense, which not going to take any credit away from them. You saw a Lions defense that, didn't really show out or stand out as an elite defense, really kind of stopped the Chiefs. And it's been a long time since we've seen receivers just be powerless on a Chiefs team.
Yeah. And another low light that we saw, and I saw specifically because I started him in fantasy, was Joe Burrow. Man gets paid, is the highest player in NFL history, and puts up like 3 fantasy points. I think he had like 70 something yards passing. Who actually paid attention to that game? Like I said, on the flight, didn't see anything. Anybody see anything out of the Cleveland Cincinnati game? All I saw was production.
I got to see the last bit of the fourth quarter. Just
I
where
checked
you're in
I
the
checked
country to
on
get
it,
to it. Yeah.
there, but I mean, it was like that miserable like fake rain going on.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I hope that's the reason why T. Higgins had 8 targets and no points. We'll
I'm
find out
just
next
saying
week
I
with Jack
somewhat
Dorsey.
called it.
Well,
I said those.
One
Go
thing
ahead.
to bear in mind is that Joe Burrow has had very little practice time in recovering from last season's injury. He has had very little practice time since the preseason began, since summer camp workouts had began. So he quite literally, that may have been the first time he ever took the field in a contact role. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's what I was going to actually get into is it's so important, I feel like, to get your starters to at least play a quarter each preseason game. You got to get them in there. You got to get a field going or something. Or
Yeah.
you get a Joe Burrow who gets Grayson 3 points in fantasy and lets me win against them.
I'm playing you this week. I might actually drive over to Western Milwaukee right now. Then, if that's the case, so we won't have to worry about your fantasy team again.
And just to add, I mean, it was raining and the Bengals O-line
Abysmal again.
rest.
Bad.
It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Well, and kind of off to Caleb's point too, he was talking about an injury. He sustained that calf injury again in the preseason. So there is a good. He didn't get cleared until late last week because he still had the questionable logo beside him on fantasy. So there's still potential. He's not 100%. So for my sake, I hope it's just a one-off thing. But I mean, I guess we'll see next week. The last low light we have here was the game last night, the Giants and the Cowboys. The Giants offense, guys, was abysmal. I mean, I don't know if it was first game jitters or just mistake.
I in my life have never seen a more physical defensive domination on a football field. And the New York Giants had such high expectations going into this season. A lot of people were thinking they would be a solid fixture in the NFC, maybe even a playoff contender. But my God, it's got to be first game jitters. I refuse to believe that a team that has that much talent just has a show out like that. Now, granted, Dallas has a freaking defense. Now, as they've proven for nearly 2 decades now, Dallas will find a way to lose. They looked dominant in that game, but they will find a way to lose. And I gotta say though, seeing the Giants get mollywopped like they did was really, really disappointing. And that's as a football fan. I can't imagine how you feel if you're waking up today as a Giants fan.
I just don't get the play call on. The first drive they went out there and they gave Barkley the ball, he ran it, and he ran it down their throats. And then they don't go back to him. Dude, the next drive, they go 3 and out with all bad passes. Then they go back and they do another 2 passes with an interception. What the hell are you doing as an offensive coordinator?
I think they're
What
preserving
terrible.
Barkley because, like, I'm telling you, you got Micah Parsons and D-Law on that line. That was a physical freaking game. You saw guys that you were seeing guys getting slung around like they were frisbees. Like,
Yeah,
so
but
that's the only. Listen. I am completely in agreement with you. Why didn't they run it? But that's the only rationale I can think is they're just trying to protect him.
and that's a fair point. But man, when you got Barkley going 22 yards on your opening drive, and then he finishes with only 51 yards, what a joke!
Agreed.
I mean, it's kind of
Um,
hard to establish a run when you're down 40-0.
but yeah.
But you did on the first. I don't know.
Well, like something that was said in our group message last week, when you can't establish a run, you got to go to the passing game, you know? So that's exactly what the Titans did. So moving on from that, we're going to go into our game predictions for this week. Our records this week, or for this week so far, obviously we have the Buffalo and Jets game going on right now, so we can't really count it. Kyle's 2-2. Nick's 2-2, BB's 2-2, I'm 2-2, and Caleb's 1-3. So, had a way to join everybody, Caleb. But this week we have the 49ers versus the Rams, the Jets versus the Cowboys, the Giants versus the Cardinals, the Jaguars versus the Chiefs, and then Green Bay versus Atlanta. So, I'm gonna go through mine real quick. And then Nick is going to go, and then Caleb is going to go. And then I would like to go for Kyle and BB to go simultaneously. So me this week, I'm just going to keep mine. I'm just going to tell y'all my predictions. I think San Francisco wins by 14 against the Rams. I think the Jets, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I think the Jets beat the Cowboys. I think the Giants bounce back against the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are one of the worst teams in the league. Kansas City bounces back too. I said earlier, I think on episode 1, that I think Kansas City beats Jacksonville this year. And then finally, I have Atlanta versus Green Bay. So let's go with Caleb. Caleb, if you want to run through yours right quick.
Yep, I'll run through it. So, all due respect to Sean McVay, I admire what they did week 1, but San Francisco is going to win, and they're going to win easy against the Los Angeles Rams. Moving over to the New York Jets-Dallas game. Now, I know that Aaron Rodgers is up in the air. Me, personally, a huge Rodgers fan. Hope he gets better. Hope he's able to take the field again, because that man is really freaking good at football. However, with or without Rodgers, I picked the Dallas Cowboys because you just do not have a defensive showing like you did last night and just completely think that the Jets are going to walk in there and get it done. So I'm picking Dallas. I have more faith in them to win against the Jets with or without Rodgers. And in New York Giants versus Arizona, I got to pick the G-Men. G-Men got a lot to come back from, just judging from last night's performance, and I would not want to beat Arizona. I feel like they're going to really use this as a bounce-back game. Arizona's in dire straits, so it's not like the Giants are going to be playing anyone really tough. And for Jacksonville and KC, I got to pick KC for similar logic to what I'm applying to the Giants. I don't think Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and especially if Travis Kelce is back by then, I don't see KC going with 2 losses. So they're gonna beat Jacksonville, and by that I mean I don't see them starting off 0-2. So with Green Bay and Atlanta, I'm taking Atlanta. Atlanta just has far more. They just seem like a far more complete team to me in comparing both performances from both teams. Green Bay had a good win against the Bears, but it was the Bears, just like Atlanta had a good win against the Panthers, but it was the Panthers. But when comparing both performances, Jordan Love may be a better quarterback, but Desmond Ridder has a lot of weapons on that offense. I think Atlanta takes it.
That he doesn't use.
So
He will.
So Nick, let's go into yours real quick. Let's go run through your picks.
So when I say San Francisco will win, I say it with an asterisk, just like I said the Bengals would beat the Browns. I said the Bengals would beat them, but I would not be shocked if the Browns upset them. I would not be shocked if the Rams somehow pulled off the win. Now, I'm still going to pick the 49ers. The biggest thing is Matthew Stafford looked healthy. He was moving. He was actually moving in the pocket as a healthy quarterback. And the last time we saw a healthy quarterback, the Rams won the Super Bowl. I don't think they're there yet just because they don't have Cup and they don't have all their weapons yet. They're going to have to figure out the run game, whether they start Jackson over Akers. They've got some things to figure out, but the Rams will be a much better team this year. But still, the 49ers have it early. So Dallas, same concept. I think Jets, big thing obviously will be Aaron Rodgers, but Dallas, they're, more of a finished product early. So they'll get that win. Giants, again, it's hard once you get down so much with such momentum against you in that rain. I would say, I wouldn't say the loss was a fluke, but the 40-0 was a fluke. So I think the Giants will bounce back pretty big. And I think it serves them as a team well to play against Arizona for a bounce back game. Kansas City, I don't see them losing 2 in a row. So I think they'll win a close one with Jacksonville. And then Green Bay is probably going to beat Atlanta by like 3 touchdowns. Jordan Love is more of an established quarterback, yes, but between the tandem with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, I know Aaron Jones tweaked his hammy. But again, you're going to have Christian Watson back, and the defense looked great. Yeah, I don't see. Atlanta, the weapons he was talking about was Kyle Pitts and Drake London. At receiver and tight end who combined for 1 catch, or 2 catches, excuse me. And so, you have Bijan Robinson and Algier. So,
yeah, makes sense. Kyle, BB, not to cut you guys off, I'm going to read through y'all's first 4 picks because I want to allocate as much time as I can for the last pick. Kyle, you've got San Francisco. BB, you've got San Francisco. You guys are split on the Jets and Dallas. Kyle, you have the Jets. BB, you have the Cowboys. You guys both have the G-Men. You both have Jacksonville. But the game that everybody here on the podcast and at home want you guys to talk about is this upcoming Green Bay versus Atlanta Falcons game. So let's start with, we'll let Kyle go first. Let him speak, and then BB, you can rebuttal. But Kyle, how are you feeling about this Green Bay and Atlanta game?
Atlanta is about to be made out to be a bunch of freaking idiots. Jordan Love, 245 yards with freaking 15 and 27 with 3 touchdowns. BB, what y'all gonna do? What y'all gonna do? Hold on.
Kyle,
Ritter only had 115 yards in the air. What a joke. Did you not just see what we did to Justin Fields, a rushing QB? We made him look like a fool. BB, y'all are going to be so beaten that you're going to come back in that group me and you're going to be like, I've given up again, guys. I'm back on suicide watch. And we're going to understand it. We're going to understand it because it's going to be probably a 35-7 blowout. And you're not going to know what to do with your life again after. And that's okay. I get it as an Atlanta fan. You're never happy. And it's okay to do it again for another year, BB.
All right, you done?
You're going to see Kyle on Code Blue body cam tonight.
Kyle, okay, look, we do this every year. I'm sick of this. It's the same thing with Wisconsin sports in general. All right, look at your Wisconsin Badgers. They go out there, they beat ITT Tech. You think they're going to win the national championship, and they get skull drugged by a team that doesn't even have a conference next year. All right, and let's not bring up the Milwaukee Brewers.
Oh, hold on.
Okay, so fast forward to the NFL. They pay the Bears is the biggest piece of shit team I've ever seen. They're like a group of 5 defense. All right.
Are you gonna give your prediction for the game yet?
Well, he doesn't want to because he knows he's gonna be wrong.
Well, I was trying to do a Chris Boomer voice.
BB.
Oh, yeah.
First things first. At least the
Falcons.
Brewers have some pitching.
15.
Anyways,
Bay, 21.
Anyways, at least the Brewers have pitching. When is you just said it, but 2017 was the last time the Falcons have a winning record. Was I correct when he said that?
2017.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
can
don't know
have
why
It's
the hell you think you're
2023
something.
this year.
Yeah, I don't know why the hell you think Ritter is something special.
Oh, he's
That
not.
is that's a 2-year player, and we'll never hear from him again. So let's
Kyle,
just let the
I was gonna
Packers
put-
speed
wait,
it up
wait,
for
wait,
you,
wait,
buddy.
wait, Kyle. Somebody fact check this for me. How many starts does Jordan Love have in his career?
I think this was his third or fourth.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
would be his fourth.
And he's been in the league for what, 4 years now?
Behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Hold on.
Oh, that's
Learning
not what you've been
from one of the
saying since July.
Oh, you mean the
Okay.
you
Aaron
mean
Rodgers'
behind-
biggest piece of
hold
shit,
on.
the worst
I've
quarterback
always
he's ever seen in his life. You're
I've
not even a
always
good
said
fan. You're
I've
a
always said
fair
that
weather fan.
I've always said that Aaron Rodgers is a piece of shit as a human, but I do respect him as a quarterback.
Oh, now
but-
you do. Now, as soon as it fits your narrative, everything's you like Aaron Rodgers.
No, I
Hey, Foster.
hate
Go
Aaron
ahead,
Rodgers.
change
and
the
I'm-
argument. Go ahead,
Oh,
change the
here we go.
argument.
I hate Aaron
Change
Rodgers.
the argument.
And I'm kind of pissed off that he got hurt because now we're going to lose out on the first round draft pick because he's a little bitch boy. But
Yeah,
like I said,
just change the
Packers-
narrative. Make it make
Packers by
sense. Kyle.
4
Make it make sense.
scores. Packers by 4 scores right there, 35-7.
the next
will see
topic,
you-
abortion.
You think wait, hold on. How many points you said you were going to score?
35-7, BB. It's going to be a 4-score TD game.
Kyle, the Packers can't even count 4 TDs.
How many? What did y'all
You
put
count
up
the
against the
40s?
trash Carolina? What did y'all put up? Only 24 points against Carolina. Dog.
Kyle, look.
Dog.
Okay, look. I wasn't going to do this to you.
Oh, here, let's see.
I feel like he's gonna play the.
Or
Oh, here we go.
Green
Okay.
Bay has the 25th rush defense. They played the Bears, and they are 25th in rush defense. Guess what? They're not fucking throwing the ball. It's kind of, what are you doing? Like, how does that happen? And
Maybe.
and if the Bears, oh God, I'm about to have.
Baby, y'all. Actually, I'm kind of pissed off that the Falcons are going to look so this Sunday because it means Joe Barry is going to get an extension.
Hey,
Because y'all are so
Who's
trash.
the Packers' best defensive player?
Good question. They got so many rookies. That's the
It doesn't matter if
problem.
he's going to end up under Bijan Robinson's fucking foot when he runs him over.
I doubt that. I doubt that.
Right.
Bijan Robinson is going to look like a idiot.
Only way-
You know what? I'm gonna say this. When Campbell sacks him for at least 6,
Bijan-
not
when he
Bijan
sacks
Robinson.
Bijan
When
Robinson?
he sacks Ritter,
So
whatever his
Bijan
name is,
Rob-
I can't remember.
He's a
Hey,
running back, Kyle.
Wait, can anyone tell me their quarterback's name? Because I forgot.
Desmond Ritter.
Ritter, there we go. Trash ass can. Which
You know what?
That.
If
When
if
Campbell
you
sacks
said
him
to
6
sack
times
Bijan Robinson,
throughout the
I
whole
will
game?
Venmo you $20.
When Ritter is sacked at least 6+ times that game, I don't want to hear you bitching.
It don't matter. We're not going to throw the ball 6 times because we're going to be running the
Ain't gonna run the
second
ball
quarter.
either. Baby, I've already put my prediction 35-7.
All right, look,
Mark it down, baby.
Let's go. Let's move on.
All right, guys. Well, that ends the NFL segment. I guess we could say we ended on a high note for the NFL this week. So I'm excited to see how that game plays out. Moving on, going into college football. Like I said earlier in the podcast, this week was a very interesting week in college football. There was some surprises. There was some tighter games than we were kind of expecting. So starting off that we always do, I guess we'll go into game of the week, which we decided the game of the week this week was Ole Miss and Tulane, which is kind of shocking. And from my side here, I predicted Ole Miss to kind of blow them out in the whole game, but from what we saw, it was more of a closer game.
Yeah, if Pittman, if Tulane's starting quarterback, wouldn't have got hurt by that team in Mobile,
Yeah.
Tulane would have beat them by at least 10 points.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree with that. Man, that Ole Miss. I don't know if
Looked
they just couldn't get it
horrible.
going or what was going. Because I do not believe Tulane's defense is that good. It was a shocking moment for Ole Miss not to come out the gate strong like they always do. And we see Ole Miss usually scoring at least I'd say 28 points before half. I would say is a good average for them. Not this, man. 10 points before half is crazy for Ole Miss.
Ole
Yeah.
Miss just proves again why they always their 10-win seasons are that's their ceiling. They always have these glaring problems that they never fix, and I mean again they're going to have problems down the road. But as far as the actual game goes, it was fun to watch because it was very back and forth. You almost want to root for the little guy when it's kind of going in that with a backup, quarterback, and you're trying to beat an SEC top 25 team. That's a big plate given, and so you almost want to root for the little guy. But it was a good game, back and forth, and eventually, I mean, Ole Miss was able to, overcome it, but Ole Miss has some problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like what Grayson said, I kind of thought Ole Miss would run away with it. I certainly did not expect to be looking at the game and then see Tulane leading 17-10 against Ole Miss of all people. So after that performance, Ole Miss was able to pull away at the end of the game and pull it off, but it was looking really bad, and it honestly has me thinking Pete Gould ain't seeing the end of the season with the Rebels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
they for them.
yeah, and another thing too is talking about the end of the game. It was 30-20 until legit 1 minute and 15 seconds left in the game. Ole Miss did a fumble recovery for a touchdown. I mean,
Yeah.
this game was really neck to neck, and Ole Miss kind of survived.
Yeah.
To lose.
Score did not reflect the game by any means.
No.
And moving on, our player of the week, we kind of talked about it. We actually had we had several candidates we could throw out there. I know last week we picked Shador Sanders. He had a great week. He had another great week this week against Nebraska. Another one was Michael Penix Jr. He had a really good week this week. But we all kind of came to a consensus that Omarion Hampton, the running back for North Carolina, they played App State. The guy had 234 rushing yards off of 26 carries, and on top of that, 3 touchdowns. So the guy played out of his mind. And as we talked about last week, that was our upset watch of the week this past week. Now, obviously, North Carolina won, but that we could say that in part it was because of Hampton and what he did on the field.
Well, when I mean Drake May was, when he was struggling, I mean it wasn't they. It was a close game. I mean, it obviously went to overtime, but without, Hampton's efforts, it wouldn't have been a game, and
Right.
App State would have, went away with it. I mean, 234 yards on 26 attempts. That's I mean, almost 10 yards a carry. He was killing them. So that's what gave Drake May the opportunity to win the game, because everybody was so focused on Hampton and how he was killing the Mountaineers defense.
And I mean, App State, it's not no slouch of a defense either.
Absolutely not.
They're like one of the top defenses in the Sun Belt, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So, moving on, we're gonna do something new this week. The first AP poll dropped, and obviously a lot of us saw the rankings. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do a too high and too low for teams that are where they're ranked in the AP poll. So we're gonna start off with Kyle. And Kyle, if you want to go ahead, take the floor and talk about your too high and too low teams.
Yeah, so my too high team is Georgia. Man, their offense, I don't trust it. I don't think they have the offense to be the number 1 team in the country. Their defense saves them from being a top 10 team, but without that offense, without that quarterback like Bennett used to be, they're just not my top 1 team. I I've said it in the beginning. When we first did this, I said I would not be shocked if Georgia lost 2 games off their schedule this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they don't have an offense, and that's going to come back and bite them in the ass really bad. Going to my too low, it's actually a team that's not ranked. I'm going with Mississippi State. Real Wadgers, veteran QB for the college. He's he's clutch. I mean, what else can I say about him? He knows where his targets are. He knows how to win games, and he reminds me of Duggins from TCU last year. He wins games, and
Yeah.
honestly, I don't believe they're top 10. Don't get me wrong, but at least the top 20. I think Mississippi State not being ranked is not justified.
Womp
Yeah.
womp.
And then Mississippi State will absolutely be talked about later on in this segment. But moving on to Caleb, it seems like you and Kyle kind of agree on being on the team that's too high ranked.
Yes, that's right, Grayson. I'm in complete agreement with Kyle. Georgia should not be ranked number one. They have not played anyone to hold that position. And to be honest, I think, you could essentially just take them out of number one, put them at 5, and then just bump the other 4 up, as far as I'm concerned, because Georgia shouldn't be in it.
Which that kind of goes into your too low team too, because your too low team is USC at 5, correct?
That is correct. I think USC has earned their way into being the top 4. Georgia, they don't belong at number 1. They don't belong in that top 4 until they actually beat someone.
Who has USC beat?
Stanford.
Yeah, they did. They beat them bad.
Yeah, but Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And that's a fair point on Caleb's part, is they do have a proven quarterback. They have a proven offense. But my rebuttal on that is they don't have a defense. So it's the opposite of Georgia to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I will say Pac-12 has 8 teams in the top 25, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They are the current Pac-12. So it's interesting to see how the landscape.
18-2.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape has kind of changed in terms of college football for this year. Obviously, it'll mellow out here soon, but it's just interesting to see all of those teams that, seeing a lot of talent coming from the out west. So, but moving on, speaking of Pac-12 teams being ranked, Nick, your too high team was actually Washington at 8. So if you want to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, before I do that, Georgia. Yes, I agree that they don't have the offensive talent, just because I mean honestly, it's just the losing Stetson Bennett, who's a proven winner. But I just don't see why they deserve to lose the number 1 spot as a 2-time, back-to-back reigning champion. I do see problems with them, but I don't see any reason for them to not be in the top spot. But Washington, though, I've got 2 very similar teams because my too low is Kansas State. But watching them play versus looking at the scores tells 2 different stories. Washington will have a good quarter and run it up in 1 quarter, and then that's kind of it. I think Washington's a very good team. I don't think they're top 10, whereas I would argue the opposite with Kansas State. Kansas State's just straight up dominating. I mean, they beat Troy, who's, a pretty proven Sun Belt team at the very least.
Good.
And so they waxed Troy. And so that's not just a normal, we blew out a Sun Belt team. Like they waxed a good Sun Belt team. And so I think Kansas State, I would flip them. I would have Kansas State at 8 and Washington at 15.
Yeah, well, and one thing I want to point out too, the opinions of Nick Noah on Troy University does not reflect everybody else in this podcast. That Cal College is not worth anything. Like they're going to get waxed all year. I hope my friend Go Jags. I hope all my buddies back home can hear this. That that's their secondary team. I hope Troy does not win another game, and that city would not be anything. It would just be a road if Troy University was not there. Which that's basically all Troy University is a truck stop. Anyways, BB. We are going into yours. We actually have some similarities, you and I, in ours. So if you want to talk about your, let's start with your too low team.
too low team is Ohio State.
No,
That's-
opposite.
I
that's-
mean,
uh,
they're
that's your-
playing like Bama.
brother. Your two low team is Colorado.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Take it from the top.
Keep it in.
Autism.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Colorado. Colorado's a top 10 team.
Mhm.
Like that. I mean, I think they'll beat if they play like they've been playing. They're going to beat USC. Let me pull up. They're beating USC. They're beating Oregon, and they're going to do something stupid and lose to Utah. So one loss pack. They're going to finish probably around 8 or 9, I think, this year, which is, miles ahead of where we thought they were going to finish.
Yeah. Just don't listen to previous episodes of the podcast.
Well, no. We were talking about Jackson State Tigers. This
Yeah.
is Buffaloes. Totally different.
Yeah. Well, what about your two high team here?
My too high team is Ohio State.
Mhm.
Granted it's week 2, but they just look real lethargic.
Yeah.
I bet you they're missing Quentin Ewers right now.
Mhm.
At this rate, they're going to get skull drugged by Michigan.
Yeah.
And honestly, Penn State might get them too. So they're in the same situation as Alabama, where they could be looking at 2 or 3 losses this year.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame might actually beat them.
Yeah. I completely agree. Ohio State, you really took the words right out of my mouth. Lethargic is kind of like what I see. It's just like, I don't know. It took a full game to kind of get Marvin Harrison Jr. involved. He didn't really do anything week 1. Week 2, he did kind of have a coming out game. But that shouldn't be the case. Like, the guy was a borderline Heisman, like preseason Heisman finalist, and you're not getting him the ball. That's an issue. So I don't think their offense is there. I think they've got athletes on defense, so that's what's kind of saving them right now. But I think they're going to be less productive on the offensive side, and they're going to end up 9-3. Now on the flip side, I think Tennessee is too low. I know they're at 11, but after this week, just kind of watching the games, I think Tennessee might be the best team in the SEC. I know it's really up for debate now, especially since Bama lost. We talked about, Georgia having a little bit of struggle on offense, but they still have a great defense. Maybe not the best team, but I think they're the most complete team, and I think that's going to get them. I put them in my college football playoff prediction a couple weeks ago, so I think they're going to be able to get in. At this point, there may not be an undefeated team in the SEC. But Nick said it best, a one-loss SEC champion is going to get into the college football playoff. That's going to happen. So, and I think that Tennessee is that team. So, moving on off of our too high, too low, we're going to go into our predictions again. Going to week 3. Right now, our records are Kyle at 5-5. Caleb is right there with him at 5-5. Nick bumped up to 7-3, was 100% this past week. BB is sitting at 4-6, 40%. That's about his grades in his accounting class. And then I am sitting at 8-2. So that being said, our span of games this week is going to be Washington versus Michigan State, North Carolina and Minnesota, Florida and Tennessee, Colorado State, and LSU versus Mississippi State. So let's start with BB. Let's just go through your span of games real quick, man.
All right. So for the Colorado State, I got Colorado by big time.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much. I think everybody's gonna have that.
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina, Minnesota. I think Omarion is going to continue his performance, and they're just going to run right through Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
LSU, Mississippi State. I'm gonna go Mississippi State on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just don't know why. Just got to feel it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got. Who's Washington play?
Washington's playing Michigan State.
Michigan State. Yeah, well, I got Michael Penix Jr. is going to go off. Honestly, he was, he had a debate to win Player of the Week or this past week. And it's like a regular occurrence for him to go about 300 yards and 3 TDs. And I think that's going to be too much for him. and
Florida and Tennessee.
Tennessee by murder. My dog is having a seizure behind me. Sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna have Tennessee by murder. Florida's just not good.
Yeah.
I would like to go next, if that's okay.
I think Nick is going to go next.
Yeah. So, Washington beats Michigan State. Michigan State's got a lot going on with Mel Tucker getting fired, and it's that program's about to get washed. So I think it'll be a gross game. It's not going to be a fun one to watch. So Washington, North Carolina, same concept. North Carolina, I don't think they skip a beat. I think they really show, they're still that proven kind of veteran, I would even say, offense. I'm taking Florida because it is at 6 p.m. at the Swamp. And Tennessee's offense has not looked great. They just each week they just kind of seem like, oh, we've almost got it, and they rely on their defense. Whereas Florida with Graham Mertz, granted they got blown out with Utah, and they have not really proven much besides the fact that they can throw a little bit because they have Pearsall. It's going to be they're in enemy territory with Tennessee, like being at the Swamp at night. That's still a very hard place to win. I like Florida. Colorado, same thing. It's not going to be really a close game. And then I like LSU over Mississippi State. I think LSU is, again, I mean, I've said it before in past podcasts. I think they're going to do very similar to last year. I still think they're a very good team. I mean, they had a chance to go out against Grambling and kind of do walkthroughs for their last week game. So I think they're going to be ready against Michigan or Mississippi State. But I like the Gators this week, though.
Yeah. And then Caleb, if you want to piggyback off that, and it seems like you and Nick actually have similar picks.
Absolutely. Me and Nick are thinking alike this week. When I would look at this lineup, I'm going just to blaze through it because I got a lot to say about Florida as well. I got Washington and UNC, Colorado winning big, like BB said, and like everyone said before, so no changes there. I got LSU. I got LSU over Mississippi State. I just think Mississippi State, it's just I don't see what
They're
what I
same
see.
old Mississippi
Yeah.
State.
And it's so unfortunate what happened with Mike Leach. Who knows where they'd be if the tragedy that befell Mike Leach and his family and the university had never happened. But unfortunately, I just, LSU's just, I feel like they're going to take this and it's going to be pretty easy for them. I'll personally be rooting for Mississippi State because I hate, with a burning passion, the LSU Tigers and their entire fan base.
While wearing a Saints jersey.
Oh, hey, they're not mutually exclusive, pal. And
Friendly fire.
Oh my God. But anyways, so which leads me to I think I jumped over no, I didn't jump over any.
No, you're right on track.
That brings me to Florida and Tennessee. So Nick took a lot of the words out of my mouth. Primetime game, the Swamp. And in addition to that, so talking about the Tennessee offense not looking good is an understatement. When we first started this podcast and this season was first starting, I was riding high on Tennessee. I think they have potential, but let me tell you, I'm not riding near as high on them now that I saw that Austin Peay game last weekend, where in the first half, Austin Peay held them to 13 points in the first half and 17 points in the second half. So you're probably thinking right now, oh, big deal, Caleb. Tennessee still beat them 30 to 13. Well, yeah, I guess that doesn't seem so bad unless you look at Austin Peay's schedule and see that they got waxed by Southern Illinois 49 to 23.
Powerhouse Southern Illinois, yeah.
Like, it's just when you see such a problematic win against Austin Peay, you just can't have much faith in the Tennessee Volunteers. So I'm thinking that they are primed for an upset by the Florida Gators.
Gotcha. Kyle, how you feeling about your picks?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna get the easy one out the way. Colorado State. I mean, if Colorado State comes within 35 to 40, I'd be shocked. Give me Deion Sanders absolutely embarrassing that school.
Somebody write that down.
I'm gonna have to go with Mississippi State actually doing the upset. I trust Real Rogers. It's at Mississippi State. Give me the Cowbells. I think it's gonna be too much for Brian Kelly to come in there and beat them. Don't like Brian Kelly. Sorry. My next one is gonna be a big upset. Actually, I think Washington going to MSU, Michigan State is actually gonna be an upset. My reason for that, the coach was of course just fired. For some weird reason, whenever coaches get fired and that interim head coach comes in, the whole team rallies against them and they want to prove something big. I think they want to prove something big, and I think Michigan State pulls the upset here. North Carolina easily beats Minnesota. Listen, PJ Fleck, you're an idiot. I hope you get embarrassed. I hope it's like a blowout. I hope you cry just like Butch Jones did. I hope they got that on camera when you're crying. Your whole program's a joke. And then Florida and Tennessee. Let me just say one player's name that I dealt with for 2 years that made me regret ever watching college football. Graham Mertz, baby. Boy, what a miserable player to watch. And you guys have no idea how many times I turned off Wisconsin football after the second quarter because of this man.
It sounds
What'd
like
you do? What'd you do
turned
last
it on
Saturday?
because you have no dignity.
No, hold on. Don't even, Nick, because
have
we
no
came within
integrity.
2 points and we
Let's see
should have
next
won that
Sunday.
game last Saturday. But whatever. Graham Mertz is a bad quarterback. I don't get me wrong. I hope the best for the guy. It's hard to,
No, you
choose a
don't.
college, lose your family and everything like that. But God, he's trash. He got Paul Chris fired from Wisconsin, who doesn't fire anyone. How bad you got to be to get fired? To get a coach fired from Wisconsin? Pretty damn bad. Tennessee is going to walk into the swamp and embarrass them.
Yeah. I guess that leads to my picks. Colorado by murder. UNC very close. I don't think that game's going to be close. Washington, Michigan State. I feel like this game would have been closer without the Mel Tucker issue. I think this could be a game that defines Michigan State's season. Like, what are they going to do after losing their coach? But I don't think it's going to go well. I'm picking Washington there. I think Mississippi State squeaks out the upset against LSU. I think Brian Kelly is still trying to get adjusted to the SEC. I don't think he's I don't think he's prepared just for that schedule. I know like last year they were a 10-2 team. I still think he's working out kinks with that LSU team. And then finally with Florida and Tennessee, I know a couple people on here have talked about Tennessee, having issues with their offense. I think this is the week they figure it out. I think Heupel will rally the troops this week, go down the swamp, and I think they'll take a win. Because one thing we talked about the struggles that Tennessee has, but we have not really talked about what Florida looks like this year. Florida does not look great. It looks like they have more issues like off the field with the on the field issues. Not saying there's anything I'm not saying there's any kind of crazy situation going on, but it just doesn't look like Napier has a hold of that team, which is really hard to do in Florida. So I think Tennessee takes the win and they go on 3-0. Moving on, it is now time for our favorite segment, Kyle's out-of-pocket pick of the week. Kyle last week was very, very close to getting his pick there, but he said something in the group message way too early and blew it. So with that, Kyle,
I just want to apologize to SMU. You were within 4 points, and I went into the group me and I said some very inappropriate things about Oklahoma, and they decided to do a 50-yard pass to go up by 11, and then y'all lost by 17. Yeah. So if I would have kept my mouth shut, y'all would have covered, and y'all might have won that game because y'all were looking damn good. My bad. That's on
But
me.
God hates Kyle. So
Yes.
anyway, so
It
moving
was
on.
within 30 seconds of him saying something.
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, I you not probably what 20 seconds later they threw that bomb.
Yeah,
That's
no
what I
kidding.
just said.
Yeah. No, sorry, but my bad.
So well, what is your out of pocket pick of the week this week?
Western Kentucky University will cover against Ohio State University. Let me say right now, the spread 28 points. 28 points. Ohio State is so lost right now on offense, man. They don't know what to do. Their QB is not like in the past. They're not putting up points, and it's the hard facts. They still have a good defense, but Western Kentucky, their quarterback Reed, for the first two games, 589 yards passing with 6 touchdown passes. They will cover that spread, and I think they actually cover it by a decent amount, and they lose by 17 to 18 points.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I don't think that it's that out of pocket with how Ohio State plays, but I mean, who knows? Like I said, God hates you, so we'll see how we'll see
Ohio
how.
State's quarterback is named Kyle.
Oh, maybe he's hated too. So
Yeah,
maybe I'll get
quite
lucky.
possibly. Yeah, and then the last segment right here that we did last week, upset watch. Like I said, we were very close on that game this past week. Game went to what?
Went
2
into
overtime.
overtime.
Yeah.
Yep.
2 overtimes. Yeah.
Overtimes. So our upset watch for this week is South Carolina versus Georgia, which I know is, maybe a lot of people aren't expecting that because Georgia is the number 1 team, but just kind of open discussion here. What does South Carolina and Beamer Ball have to do to pull out the upset versus Georgia this week?
Leggett,
Yeah.
the wide receiver Leggett, he has to have again. I mean, he has close to 300 yards over the 2 games, and Rattler cannot make a mistake. He has to play a perfect game. South Carolina, they've already got the 1 loss, so they're not really playing for anything anymore, which can give them an edge. Whereas Georgia's playing with something to lose. South Carolina's defense is going to have to create a couple turnovers. If they don't do it, I think Georgia's defense is going to stop them enough. But if South Carolina, again, if Spencer Rattler is going to have a 350-yard passing game, and Leggett's going to have at least, I would say, 120, 130 yards and a touchdown or 2 to make this thing, close. But from the past 2 weeks, they've done that. So I very well could see this happening. Whereas Georgia, again, kind of like what I'm saying with Tennessee, is they're about to be due for an upset just because they've had so much hype and, they haven't really played anyone. But I think South Carolina, Spencer Rattler's going to have to use his legs, though. He can't, he's going to have to get a couple first downs. You got to look at it like, how teams used to play against Alabama was your running quarterbacks would, kill Alabama. And it's kind of shifting over to Georgia now. You have to have a mobile quarterback that can get you at least 30 yards on the ground, but avoid sacks.
Nick, you put that very very good right there. I would say turnovers is a big thing, but I think if South Carolina can actually hold the Georgia struggling offense to a bunch of 3-and-outs and play that field position where they get them 3-and-outs at the 25-yard line multiple times and get the ball around their 30 to 40-yard line, I think that could play a bigger part than the turnovers itself. I think Spencer, I'm just going to say his first name. I'm not even going to try his last name. Spencer having 2 big explosive plays could actually change this game, and I think that's all he needs.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, too, with South Carolina, like Georgia is almost like the prototypical SEC team right now. They're going to have a good rushing defense. So they're going to have to beat them over the air. And this could be the week that Spencer Rattler decides to, have his career game or season game. So they're going to have to be dominant over the air because I don't think they're going to get it done on the ground. And then their defense is going to have to either bend not break or create long drives for Georgia. Can't let them score quick, and have the offense come back out there because as we've said before, Georgia's offense is not up to par. I mean, really to what it was last year. It's not up to par to what it was last year. So if they can make Georgia have long drives and get out there and score on their possessions, at least a field goal every single time, I think South Carolina's got a really good chance.
And I would say, for both reasons that you, Kyle, and Nick all pointed out, I think, Spencer Rattler could very well outpace Georgia if they play the game right. Another thing I'll point out that I haven't heard yet, and what I'm about to say is far easier said than done, but if the defense for South Carolina is able to cut the value of Brock Bowers on that offense, if they're able to cut that in half, that's only going to make the job for South Carolina and Spencer Rattler all the more easier. So, if they can control Brock Bowers even a little bit, because you can't completely contain him, I think, those are the recipes to success in Columbia.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
All right.
They're going to have to play like when they beat Tennessee last year and blow them out. It's going to have to be that kind of game. And before we go, I just saw a report that the Jets fear that it's an Achilles injury for Aaron Rodgers.
No.
So,
brother,
that's a dark day for football.
Yeah,
Jets got Aaron Rodgers and a first-round pick.
All right, guys. Well, that ends episode 3 of the JEB Board podcast. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, again for listening. We'll be back next week. So until then, we'll see y'all next time.
Get better, Rodgers. I mean that. Don't you laugh, you jackass.